Legend of Total War here, and today I'm going to be reading through the Total War Warhammer 3 patch 5.2 devblog. So patch 5.2 should be coming out at the end of this month at some point. I don't have an exact date. I don't think they've officially announced that yet. And just go through some of these things, give you my opinions, and I'd love to hear your opinions on what's coming for patch 5.2. Now, this blog here appears to have been written by Mitchell Heasty. I'm very familiar with Mitchell Heasty as a developer. I've been following him for a long time. I would say he's a friend of a friend, and I've been following him since he first started working on Total War Warhammer, as he mentions over here with Call of the Beastmen. And a lot of the ideas that have been put forward by Mitchell have been some of the better DLC ideas, coming with like race updates and stuff like that. And I also know, and this isn't mentioned in this dev blog, that Mitchell has been working on Total War Warhammer in Total Warhammer 1 and 2, and worked on Warhammer 3 up until Champions of Chaos, because I was actually at a meeting with Creative Assembly where Mitchell was explaining what was coming for Champions of Chaos, because I was still in the partner program then, and basically saying that he's worked on this and then he's being moved on to another project. And what seemed to have happened is that he went on to work on whatever project, it didn't mention, and has been brought back over to Total War Warhammer 3 to continue working on the DLC. So that's definitely a good thing for Total War Warhammer 3 for sure, but hard to say what happened on the other projects that he worked on. I can only really speculate that maybe it was Three Kingdoms 2 or World War 1 or who knows. It's just speculation, doesn't mean anything. But whatever the case is, he's back on Total War Warhammer 3, and that's a very good thing. He comes up with some really good ideas. And I somewhat suspect that he's not necessarily on the DLC team, but there's like a new team there, and this is just a suspicion, that is kind of like a legacy updating team. It's like a just two teams, one working on updates, one working on actual content. That's what it seems to be from this, because they've expressed that they want to actually do more regular updates, and the updates will be more akin to like minor rework of factions. So this is really good stuff. Basically, this is leading to more hope towards the future of Total War Warhammer 3. Like, don't get me wrong, it's still probably ending fairly soon. Warhammer 40k is on the way, probably looking at about 2, maybe a bit longer years. And when that comes, it's unlikely that Warhammer 3 will continue its development. But until then, hopefully good times are coming. Now, let's go through some of this. I'm not going to read through all of this. You can read it yourself, but this is all pretty good. This is where he talks about all the updates and stuff, and this is largely, we'll just have to wait and see how we go. It's definitely promising, but we'll have to wait and see. But the actual content for patch 5.2, so it comes with bug fixes, other smaller changes and additions, but primarily has 4 major components, and a few surprises I won't mention here. So there is more than just this. We just don't know what they are just yet. So new feature for the Dwarfs, the Deeps. Going to be spending most of the time talking about that. Rework for the Chaos Cult feature. A small amount of time I'm going to spend on the new small global feature, because there's not a whole lot of information on that. And there is absolutely no information to Cathay's Ivy Road update. They mentioned it here and then nowhere else in the blog, at least as far as I can tell. So the Deeps. So this is actually a mechanic that I really wanted to see for the Dwarfs for a really long time. It's basically like Undercities for Dwarfs, but it seems like it's like a way more in-depth mechanic. I mean, it's called the Deeps. So the way it works is that in apparently every city, you can build a new building called the Great Gate. So at tier 1, you can build it. It's very expensive. I don't know what this resource here is. It seems like it's tied to your relation with Thorgrim. Hard to say. I mean, that's obviously a placeholder icon there. So we'll just have to wait and see what that actual resource is. We just don't know. But yeah, pretty expensive to build it, and it seems like it requires 2 growth. And then it'll unlock basically an Undercity with 6 build slots. So the first one will have like just the level of the build. Like, it's a whole new settlement essentially, but underground. So this is at Karaza Karak here. And we can also see in this building here that there are 3 unique locations in Skavenblight, Zarnagrin, and Karak 8 Peaks where it'll have a different build set. Maybe there'll be like landmarks or something you can build underground. I don't know entirely, but we'll see. But yeah, you can see that you can upgrade this to tier 3, which is a little bit weird because there's a tier 4 building there. I'm not entirely sure how that works. But you can also see that there are basically blockers here. So at tier 1, you get 1 build slot. I'm not entirely sure how it works, where this gives you 2 additional, and then this one gives you the rest of them. It doesn't express that. It just says here that the block tunnels cannot be removed manually. This blocker will be demolished upon sufficiently upgrading the entrance hall building. It's entirely possible that the entrance hall is this building here, but again, I'm not entirely sure. I'm speculating a little bit because not all information is provided. But we can see here that there are quite a few building chains that you can build potentially in here, and these are quite different from what we would normally expect from a building in Total War Warhammer. So they've given us a couple of examples here. So this one here is this build chain here. And I'm not sure if we're looking at the level 3 or the level 1. It kind of looks like they're hovering over the level 3 here. So I had to sort of take a double take when I looked at this. So I was like, increase settlement income by 5% and then reduce settlement income by 5%. But what I realized pretty quickly is that this is about playstyle, and that's really good. Funnily enough, this will never play for my playstyle. I'll probably never build this building, right? So the way it works here, if it is to be taken exactly as it's written, is that every turn that passes, you get 5% extra income for having this building in this particular region. But for every settlement that you have, it'll also be subtracted. So if you have more settlements than turns have passed, don't build this, because you'll actually make less money. But if you're like at turn 100 and you only have 5 settlements, well then there is a 95% tick bonus essentially to this. So really quite good if you want a turtle, and that's exactly what's designed here. So it's encouraging dwarf players, or more like rewarding dwarf players if they don't really want to just like build out a massive empire. This is why I said that this is something that I'm probably not going to make use of, because usually what happens in my campaigns, not always, but usually, by about turn 50, I have about 1 settlement per turn. So that means I've got about 50 settlements, right? And then by about turn 80, I'm starting to get 2 settlements every single turn playing as a dwarf. So if I had built this building, I would actually be losing income for every one that I would have. But if you're like beyond turn 500, I don't know why anyone would play it to that extent, and you only own 5 settlements, then you would make a ridiculous amount of money from this. So basically, you have a potential for unlimited economy using this particular building, which is really interesting. And then we've got down here the other option, seal the hold. So if we saw where this build chain is, seems like it's this one over here under strategy, where there is another option, but this is all we can see at the moment, seal the hold. Basically, making this settlement very difficult, impossible to starve out, immune to siege attrition entirely, so that the AI or whoever's attacking you will not be able to starve out your forces at all, and give you more defensive supplies, more ammunition during the siege defense battles, but will massively restrict the amount of growth of the province. So basically, you're sealing yourself off from the outside world, and you're just playing it super defensive. So this could be really useful on like a border region when an endgame crisis is coming, and you've built up the defenses, because it also provides garrison for Ironbreakers. And if you're down to 5 settlements or fewer, it also provides additional benefits here. So that's really good, I suppose, for people who are in a last stand situation and are constantly getting attacked at one particular settlement. So that's really interesting. It's giving you different playstyle options. That's really good for the dwarves. Honestly, right now, the dwarves are really being taken care of. Like, I was pretty happy with just what the dwarf rework was originally, but this one here just adds so much more to it. But I guess it really comes down to how much you want to invest into it, because it's all going to be taking gold, and gold needs to be spent all over the place, and how much you want to justify developing this stuff largely needs to be seen in terms of its benefits versus the regular income buildings, and also based on playstyle. So I'll need to really get into it. So I can guarantee you that a dwarf live stream is going to be coming pretty soon after patch 5.2 comes out. And I really want to delve in here and go into the deeps. It also mentions as well, there are also some stranger things you can discover in the deeps, but I'll leave those for you to find. So maybe if you delve in too deep, an army spawns led by a Balrog. Sorry, I mean a Bloodthirster. You never know. We'll see. Also, this could be interesting enough. They could be testing the waters here with a potential Lord of the Rings Total War. I don't think it's in development, but maybe one day, we'll see. So that's the deep stuff. I'm really excited for that. This is like 10 out of 10 for hype on this. So really, really good. Then a Chaos Cult feature rework. This stuff here is also very interesting because previously I really didn't care much about cults, with the exception of Slanesh, which is mentioned here because Slanesh you can send your cultists out to go and establish cults, and it was worth doing it because you would get various benefits and it was easy to spread, whereas the other ones not so easy to spread and the benefits were pretty minor in most cases. So there's a lot of information that we don't have about it, but basically there are now two types of cultists. There's the regular cultists that you've always had access to, which you can attach into an army, and then there's like the ones that you can spawn apparently from cults. I'm not entirely sure, but these ones here, their job is only to generate one cult. And the cult that they generate will have 3 build slots, whereas these ones here, that your regular heroes, which can spread as many as they are able to, I suppose. There's probably going to be a cooldown for how often you can do it, and it's probably 15 turns per cultist. I'm not entirely sure. Those ones will only have 2 build slots. So if you have a look here, this cult here is obviously spread by a regular cultist, and then there's various other buildings. What some of these buildings do, it says there's like 36 potential build options for them. Not entirely sure of all of them, but there's a couple here that we can see. So obviously some placeholder text there. So this one would be a cult spread by a Magus, and the other ones would be from just a regular cultist. So we can see here some of the examples here. There's a 36 build chains across all cults, and also every one of the Chaos Demons can now spawn like this version of a hero. So this one here, Ritual of Summoning, instantly transport your faction leader to this settlement. Apparently all of the Chaos factions can now do this one. It's just going to be called something different for them. So instantly, Khorne was originally able to do this, and that was really useful, especially in Scarbrand's Immortal Empires campaign, because in the Badlands, it's not really the best place to start, and you usually end up with a Khorne cult spawning in the Chaos Wastes in the north, and there's some really good landmarks and just really good enemies to go and fight up there. That's very useful for you. So it's actually really beneficial to teleport your faction or your faction leader to certain locations. Now, that being said, cults will no longer spawn in areas with high corruption. It actually works the other way around. The cults are there to spread corruption, not corruption there to spread cults. So no longer will a cult just spawn up in the Northern Chaos Waste. You're going to have to send a hero all the way out there. So no longer will Scarbrand be teleporting over to the Northern Chaos Wastes on turn 10, which was a pretty viable strat to do, especially if you did like an early endgame crisis and you want to escape it. And then there's intricate preparations here. This one also looks like a Zinch one. This one looks a little bit weird because Grimoire cost minus 20 per turn for changing of the way cost minus 80% faction-wide. But discoverability plus 200 sort of indicates that this would get discovered immediately. But the thing is, you can actually mitigate that by putting in 20 heroes. So if you put 20 heroes in the region, well, then that would mitigate that. And there's possibly buildings that can be used to reduce discoverability. Now, previously, cults actually couldn't be discovered at all because they mostly didn't do anything to the enemy anyway. And now they're adding discoverability to it, which makes sense given that the effects of the cults are going to be significantly improved. So if there is a cult in your area, you're probably going to want to get rid of it. But yeah, this seems overpowered, especially if you can keep that going over multiple turns. But I imagine that the intentions of this one, this is probably just as it is right now, but I imagine that the thought of this was you build this, it's only going to last one turn before the AI faction destroys it, and you get one turn where your changing of the way cost is significantly reduced. That's my thoughts behind that one. But it does, on paper, kind of look a little bit overpowered. Then you got Ritual of Blood over here. War will be declared on a random faction. Instantly replenish all armies faction-wide. I wonder if, because this obviously looks like a Khorne one, I wonder if that will also replenish your blood hosts. So that'll be interesting to see. It's not really clear because blood hosts can't replenish, but you also kind of can replenish them with post-battle loot options. It'd just be interesting to know if that would happen to it, because that could be really powerful. Imagine all of your really worn out, like 10% strength blood hosts, and you get like 20 of them, because they don't increase supply lines, and they just instantly get replenished back to full strength. That would be fucking insanely powerful. So I'm hoping that's the case, And I wonder if they've thought about that, because I kind of get a feeling like they probably won't replenish the Blood Host, but we'll see. And it destroys the cult upon completion. Honestly, war being declared upon a random faction is probably not that big of a deal, because the world is so big, so you could be in the Badlands and it randomly declares war on friggin' the northern provinces. This is like, they're not going to come and bother you. Or it could randomly declare war on one of the pirate factions out in the sea. Or it could randomly declare war on an allied faction. So it really is quite a gamble with that. Which, a gamble is really more along the lines of Zinchian, but randomly declaring war on a faction is very corn, so who knows. Ritual of Success over here. Settlement only instantly gains 200 seductive influence upon completion. Instantly gain 5,000 income. Cult is instantly destroyed. So it's showing some of the ones that I think will be instantly destroyed, although it doesn't particularly mention that right there. But these are way more interesting than +5... cultists. Oh, what's the resource on this one again? Devotees per turn. +5 skulls per turn. +5 what's it called? Grimoires per turn. +5 infections per turn. Really quite boring. The current issue of the cult. So this is all looks really interesting, and will probably allow for more different playstyles with the demon faction. So that'll be good. And then there's unusual locations, new mini feature. So this update seems to really want to focus on Undercity type expansions, because basically a random building can just magically show up in a random region. Maybe you own it, maybe you don't. And they said there's apparently 20 in total so far that can show up. And what the conditions are, it's really hard to know at this stage what it's going to be. It's not clear. But this is an example of one of them, Grail Knight Grave, Bretonian Holy Site. I imagine that you would only really gain benefit of this if you were playing as Bretonia. So control, corruption in adjacent province -2, corruption -5. And when the control is above 75, chance for characters in this region to gain a trait associated with this location. Now, another thing to note with the traits, I hope they're actually good, because if they're like lousy, because if it's like +1 leadership on a Wednesday in a region where there is a unusual location, then you got to keep in mind that you can only have a total of 40 traits, including your unique trait on a particular lord. So if the trait associated with this is dog shit, you're probably going to want to avoid it. But we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, new traits showing up, as long as they're interesting, that's good. I really do think that Creative Assembly should consider increasing the trait cap from 40 to 60, I think. Personally, I like to use a mod that actually removes the trait cap entirely, because once a character just stops gaining traits, I kind of stop caring about them. But that's just me personally. And yes, I do use mods sometimes. Anyway, so here's another one over here, Grand Illuminator's Residence. This one here seems specifically designed for the Empire, and this is like an Undercity, because it's not taking up a regular build slot. Obviously, a lot's obstructed here, but you can see that it's not the usual 10 build slot province. It's got to be an Undercity, right? And it's providing 10% chance of per turn of increasing the fealty of a random elector count. That's obviously very useful. Prestige gained, but also causes chaos, undivided corruption. Now, apparently these locations, you can demolish them. So if something like this shows up and it's causing you too many problems, apparently you can just demolish it, and maybe it'll come back again another time, who knows. And then there's some teasers here with some icons with no additional information. So I'm not entirely sure about this. Like, obviously that one looks like chaos corruption, something to do with the Empire. Is that Marienburg? I'm not entirely sure. Skaven something here. But this icon here, I don't know. Is that Dark Elf? I'm not entirely sure. You let me know. And then there's, of course, no mention about the Cathay Caravan update, which I do think it really needed an update. I'm not a huge fan of the Caravan system, but I would certainly like to see more information about that. But I think they just sort of forgot about it, or maybe they just wanted to hint towards it without actually providing information about it. But overall, really happy with what I'm seeing so far with patch 5.2. Seems like, and don't forget, this is not everything. It seems like it's kind of more substantial than 4.2, because 4.2, while it did add content, it didn't really provide any serious updates. And I think that's kind of what Total War Warhammer 3 really needs. Some updates to legacy races, like the Dwarfs. They're in a really good state now. I'm very happy with how they play. And that's before the Deeps was added. So the racial updates, I kind of value them more than just getting a few extra units here and there. But again, not everybody values the same thing as me. Some people would certainly love to see more units being added in these updates. And I have a suspicion that there will be more units added, but I just don't know what the details are. It's just a suspicion. It's not a leak or anything. I just have a suspicion there is more to come, and it is actually going to be content. And whether or not there'll be a patch 5.3, I'm not entirely sure, because it is still a fair distance away until the next DLC. We're looking at probably the end of November from what I'm hearing. So I think that there might actually be a patch 5.3, but again, this is just a suspicion. I'm not entirely sure. And maybe, who knows, maybe Lisbon and Norsko will get updated next. I don't know. But anyway, let me know in the comments below what you think of this update, and also what potential faction updates you'd like to see for 5.3, if there was to be a 5.3. There's no harm in speculating whatsoever. And, you know, Creative Assembly do say Mitch says in this blog here, that they are looking across all forms of like Total War community, whether it be on the Reddit, on their official forums, on the Steam community forums. They're probably going through YouTube videos as well, because YouTube does have a lot of traffic for Total War. And I know that they do actually pay attention to that kind of stuff. So let me know what your thoughts are, and we can have a discussion next time I live stream. Anyway, that's the end of this one. Appreciate you guys, and I'll see you next time. Later, guys.